Hello, Joanne. It's time to make some bread. So in case you've forgotten any of the steps, we're going to make a simple loaf of bread here. All right. So we have our nice KitchenAid mixer, nice clean bowl, yeast, warm water. I think we need some salt. We need some sugar. And that's about it. So, first thing, I'm going to put some yeast in. Now, should it be a teaspoon? Yeah. How about another teaspoon? How about most of another teaspoon? Okay. Does it matter that much? Not that much. We'll put about 2 teaspoons of sugar in with it. Got to have something to eat. Some places say put some salt in, some places don't. So, add a teaspoon of salt in. And now, something that is pretty important. Water, warm water. Should be able to put your finger in it without you going ow or anything like that. But it should feel warm. That'd be good enough. So I've put it in.
How much?
It's 1.5 cups of water, but that really depends on how much bread you want to make. You'll be adding about twice as much flour to that. So if you want a smaller loaf, only put 1 cup of warm water in, like that, right? So I'm going to stir it up for a moment. And now, we'll let it be for 5 or 10 minutes. What we want to do is turn the yeast on. The yeast is quiet. There's nothing going on with it. It'll last for years, unless it gets some water and some food, in which case, the yeast will become active again. So that's what we want. How do you know it's become active? Well, as soon as it starts chewing up food, it starts, giving off gas, if you will. And you can see the little gas bubbles coming up. So we'll look at it in about 5 or 10 minutes and see if there's little gas bubbles coming up, okay? See you in a minute. Hello, Joanne. All right, it's been a few minutes now. The yeast, if you look in there, hard to tell, but you can definitely see it's starting to do stuff, those weird rings, okay? The yeast is coming alive. All right, so that means as long as the yeast is alive and well, why don't we start adding the flour and stuff we need and see how we go. I'm going to add a little bit of this. Seems like it might help it a little bit. That special diastatic flour. All right. Feeds the yeast. So, mixing it. And now, I'm going to start mixing in the flour. To mix in the flour, this will not work to mix in the flour. I'll just hurt the machine and nothing will work well. So, what we need is the dough mixer. And about 3 cups of flour. Now, how do you know you've added the right amount? Well, that's the consistency of the dough. So, I don't really take anything written in stone. See how the dough works out. If it's too thin, add more. If it's too thick, add a little bit more water. Or don't add so much flour next time. Whatever. I'm going to put in, just for some texture, some oats. Now, if you want to add in other stuff, now's the time to add it in. It's fine. You can put in more sugar and raisins and cinnamon if you wanted to make a cinnamon raisin bread. Here's one other thing. don't know that it has any effect on the flavor, but boy, does it make this healthier. So some flaxseed meal. Oh, all right. So lock it. Now we let the KitchenAid work. So again, about twice as much flour as you use liquid. And you can use all sorts of different liquids in there. You can add more butter or eggs or whatever you'd like. See what it's doing now? See how it's all sticky to the edge? Well, that's not really good. So what that means is we need more flour. And when it pulls itself all together in a solid ball, kinda, and it pulls stuff away from the edge nicely, yeah, that's what you're looking for. And you have to make it go a little harder. Ah, yeah. That's what we're looking for. Okay. See how it's all pulled away from the edge there? That's the stuff we're looking for. Now, the mixer is working. We can let it just work for the next 5 minutes or so. At the end, what you'll see is the dough starts looking elastic, looking tough. When you push it, it pushes back. It's not just a mess. It's starting to turn into a cohesive, tight ball. So we're gonna let this mix. We'll come back in a couple minutes. Okay. Okay, so it's been mixing for a while. Let's check it. All right, watch close. I touch it, oh, it sticks to me. So what does that mean? Needs more flour, right? Not much. It's looking beautiful. It's starting to look elastic. It's looking just the way you want, except it's still sticky. It's picked up all the flour from around the bowl. So I'm gonna add another tablespoon and a half of flour. Don't have it go too fast or you'll be covered with flour. Let it go. See how it goes. All right, look at how it's fallen apart a little bit. You want that. The flour should be getting it in it and kind of tearing it up like that. All right. It was pretty close because it was holding into a ball, but being that it was still sticky, that's not quite right. So I think we probably are pretty close now. So we'll beat it up real well. Make sure your KitchenAid can't bounce up because boy, it will. Now check it out. All right. A tiny bit still sticky, but not so much. I'm going to put another tablespoon of flour into it. Don't turn it on fast. So it has to kind of fall apart when it's working. Sometimes a ball will just clasp onto it and you can tell it's not really kneading it very much. And something I do to get that to work around is to turn it on super fast speed, because then the ball is pulled apart and it has to then be kneaded. So as long as you don't have too much dough in it, the mixer seems to play very nicely with it. And to new bread makers, it's important to realize you can do all sorts of things not quite right. And you're still going to end up with an absolutely delicious loaf of bread at the end of it. As long as there's yeast and water and flour and some salt, you're going to have a loaf of bread. All you need to do is work it, let time do its thing, do the kneading you need. Sometimes there's loaves that you don't have to knead very much, but the KitchenAid makes it so nice. So let's see how we're doing now. A tiny bit still sticky. I'll put one last. I can't imagine I need any more than that. Ooh, not too fast. You don't want too much flour in it, just the right amount. And if you had too much flour, it's still going to be a delicious loaf of bread. But over time, you find what you like, and the bread evolves to you. You could put so many things in here, and the flour is what's going to feed the yeast, so the bread will still happen around everything you put in there. So you can take chances and have fun with it. And you'll still end up with a delicious loaf of bread. All right, take a look at that. There you go. Not sticking to me at all. Pretty elastic. It's been worked for, probably 10 minutes in the KitchenAid. So now, get it off there. I'm just going to let it sit in the bottom of that bowl. It's decently warm in here, so let it sit for, say, half hour, 45 minutes. And if you take a look at it, when we come back, it should be doubled in size, roughly, by the time we see it. So take a look in there. So we should double that in size, roughly. So it'll be a big puff. Want to keep it dry, so let's some saran wrap on top. And let time and yeast work its magic. See you in a little bit. So the dough is rising, doing pretty good. Take it out on the counter. Some flour. All right, now we're just going to make it into 2 loaves, cook them in there, bake them in there. All right, we'll do one at a time. So you get some flour on it. You pull a tongue of, you see that? It's like a tongue. Pull it out, push it down on itself. Turn it a little bit. Pull out, squeeze between your fingers, pull out a tongue of it. Put it to the center, push it down, turn it. Pull out, what's that? A tongue. You just pull part of it and you pull it out till it looks like a tongue. Then you take that tongue and you shove it right in the middle. You could say all sorts of things as you do this, but pull a tongue, shove it, turn it. Pull a tongue, shove it, turn it. Pull a tongue, shove it, turn it. All right, done that a few times. It's getting tight. The bread itself is starting to get tight. So if I pick it up now and just do this, just pull it down around the edges, and there's all sorts of ways you could do this. There's really, you can't go wrong with this too much, but it's nice and tight. Go ahead, you poke it. See? You poke it. Nice and tight. All right? Same thing. Pull a tongue, push it in, turn it. 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 Pull a tongue, push it into the center. All right, same thing. It's tightened up quite nicely. And now if I just pull it around, it makes a nice ball. Now, I'm putting it in these loaf pans, which are probably too big for it. It doesn't really matter. I'm going to let it rise for a nice long time. If I left it all together and made it one big bowl, one big ball of it, I could do it in the Dutch oven. These I'll do in the loaf pans because you probably have loaf pans handy. Oh, sorry. Forgot one thing. Make it easy on yourself when it comes time to turn it out. Spray them. You'll see when we turn them out, ooh, that makes it a lot easier. So now I'm taking them and I'm putting them in an oven that had been heated to 170 degrees. And I'm going to turn it off. Just let it sit in the oven for, say, 3 hours till they're getting bigger, about double. At which point I'll take them out, heat up the oven to about 350, put them in, and those things I'd probably bake for about 22 minutes each. See how they're looking. Check them at 22 minutes. If they're not golden and beautiful enough, I'll leave them for a few more minutes. That's all there is to it. Just before I bake them, though, I probably, depending on how big they've gotten, I'll probably want to put like an X across the top. I'll show you that when I get there. See you in a few hours. All right, so it has been a while. If you look at this, they've roughly doubled in size, all right? But it took a long time. This is the next morning, so it takes as long as it takes, sometimes longer, sometimes shorter. Let it double in size, all right? I put some plastic wrap over it to keep it from getting dried out. You don't want to let the crusty part get all dried out. All right, so these are ready to go. The last thing to do before we put them in is to what they call score them. We want to make allowances when we put them in. They're going to expand a lot, so we don't want it to rip itself apart kind of in doing that. So you can make any kind of design you like. I would highly recommend using something very, very sharp so you don't mess with the dough. It's just risen very nicely. So a lot of people put sort of like an X across the top, but we can use any design that makes your day. For these, I'll just make a simple X. All right, so the oven is 350. These aren't too big. I would think probably between 20 and 25 minutes would be all they need to bake. So we'll put them in and we'll start checking them at somewhere around 20 minutes, okay? Woohoo! All right. So it's been about half an hour. I kept checking it, probably a little longer than half an hour. Let it go as long as it takes, and I'll show you what we're looking for. Look at that. Brown, beautiful. All right, because I sprayed, it comes out to a simply lovely loaf. Or shall I say, two simply lovely loaves. And you can say, see, if the spray did not take, it's going to tear it a little bit. So, put them on something to let them dry nicely. And that is the bread. And in about 5 minutes, try it with a piece of butter. I think you'll love it. That's bread. And that is what it's all about. Perfect bread. Warm enough for butter to melt on it. Doesn't get much better than that.